All right. Welcome to Litscapes, everyone. Thank you for joining me once more for this in parentheses short episode. And when I say short episode, I do hope we keep it short. I know I'm always saying that we're gonna have these short episodes, and I keep going on for like 25 minutes. I don't think many of you are watching the whole episode. I mean, I sincerely hope you are. Right? And I hope you're hitting that like button, that you're sharing it, you're subscribing, right? You have your notifications on, all that jazz. But at least I do hope you're seeing the whole show, right? I mean, here I am bearing my soul to you guys. I'm sharing personal experiences, literary reading experiences, but nonetheless, right? I want to make it personal, but I'm always saying, right, that we're gonna keep this short, and I just end up talking, and somebody should just shut me up and cut me off at some point, right? I just I need those checks. But that's the point of these in parentheses. It's just me sharing stuff with you guys, and we have the last chapter episodes where ideally we're gonna have guests constantly. We've already had recently a guest on the show, right? We had Mila talk to us a little bit about her experience reading Ulysses. We had that Bloomsday special. Some months ago we had our very first guest, Sylvia Barrientos, a friend and colleague of mine. We had the first collaboration where we did Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go. We read Never Let Me Go on the show. Sadly, I cannot say for certain if we're gonna have that episode on the podcast because just too many technical difficulties in getting it produced. I don't know if it's gonna come up at some point or if it's lost footage. But we're having guests for those last chapter episodes, those long end of the month specials. Monthly specials, not always going to be end of the month, but for these in parentheses, right? It's just me trying to share something of personal significance with you, and I do hope you're tuning in and you're taking notes and you're checking out the books we're checking out. That you can. I mean, I just hope that I can inspire, if anything, the least bit of interest in you to go out and read that much more, just a little bit more. And if not, then whatever, right? I mean, no one's making you watch this. No one's making you tune in. But I do have fun. Just talking about books and talking about literature and talking about reading and sharing these experiences with you. And the experience today that I'm going to be sharing with you guys actually comes, the inspiration for this episode comes from a viewer's question. A student of mine posted, that doesn't sound good, right? So like only students watching this podcast. I hope we have a little bit of everything out there, right? Just readers and bookworms and literature scholars and aficionados and all sorts of people out there. I hope you're all watching, but it was a student in particular in this case that shared a comment through the episode of queer literature that we did for Pride Month. And she was just asking about if I recommended Kindle or Kobo, because she's thinking of getting an e-reader. as you've seen, right, I always have my e-reader here on the show. It's my main reading tool. It's my main window to literature. And at work, my students also see me constantly, right, with my e-reader, and I'm always trying to be reading something and just promote the habit, promote the love for books in general, for reading. And the point is that this student asked me, right, if I recommend Kobo or Kindle in order for her to make an informed choice and get the best e-reader for her. And it just got me thinking, like, yeah, that's something that I could share. I really enjoy talking about the e-reading experience and promoting ebooks and promoting, well, here it goes. What do I recommend? Well, spoiler alert, it's Kobo. Right now, we're not sponsored, right? It's not a Kobo commercial, but if anyone from Kobo out there is listening, right? Here I am kind of doing your job for you, and hope this translates to a boom in business. I doubt it, but yeah, no, we're not being sponsored by anyone yet. Maybe in the future, I don't know, but definitely, here it is. I personally recommend Kobo for the e-reading experience over Kindle from Amazon. But let me get into why e-readers, why e-books, why read on a screen? Why this? Why this as opposed to this, right? For starters, it's not an opposed to, it's not a replacement, it's not a substitution. No. Okay. It's an expansion, it's a complement, right? It's a different experience, but we'll see. We'll get into its virtues. But let me just start out with how I got into it. So, I was reading some books, some old classics on PDF. I used to work many years ago. I worked at a hotel as a reservations agent and receptionist, and I spent a lot of time at the front desk. Fortunately, sitting down. I know a lot of receptionists are, constantly standing throughout the whole shift, but fortunately I would be sitting down. I had a computer in front of me, and there was a lot of downtime. A lot of that hours, particularly during weekdays. And I would, get these PDFs from the internet, Gutenberg, right? The Gutenberg library, and all these different archives of classics, and I would read them during this downtime on the screen on the computer. They were PDFs, so whatever. But I read a lot, and after a while, I just thought, fast forward a few years later, I'm working somewhere else. I've started studying English at college, and I realized that I'm reading a lot. I really enjoy it, and I thought, well, if I'm reading all these PDFs, maybe I can just get myself a Kindle and read on that instead of having to read on a computer, which is not always the most comfortable thing. So the point is that I go to this electronics imports, right? Yeah, it was this imports store of electronics, all sorts of gadgets and devices and whatnot. And I'm asking for the Kindle, and they tell me they don't have any available, right? They're sold out, but they offered me a Nook. The Nook is the e-reader from the bookstore, the American bookstore called Barnes & Noble. It's kind of like the library rival to Amazon. But Barnes & Noble's a lot. It's dedicated to brick and mortar physical stores, but they have their own e-reader called the Nook. This was many years ago. So I got my first e-reader and it completely revolutionized life for me. Well, at least my reading life. Right? I mean, this was a basic device, right? No light, no, I guess that's basically it, just the no light. Right? But the experience of reading on the page, all these classics that I had been unable to get through, and it was precisely that, right? So there were back in high school. I feel like I'm talking a lot about high school during these shows, but I guess that's where my love for literature really started. So back in high school, I had to read a bunch of books, right? My junior and my senior year, well, all years, but especially junior and senior years, it was a lot of reading in my language and literature classes. And, some of those were tough reads, right? And I have to admit now that I didn't read all of them, just parts. Well, also, to be fair, we, like in the class, we didn't read all the books in their entirety. But some of them were really hard reads, right? We had Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, and we had The Great Gatsby, and we had The Grapes of Wrath, Hamlet, Joseph Heller's Catch-22, Angela Sash's by Frank McCourt, and Brave New World. Well, Brave New World, to be fair, that was I think that was my sophomore year. But all these complicated books, we had Kurt Vonnegut, and all these hard reads. I remember, of course, A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce, which we actually touched a little bit on when I was here with Mila doing the Bloomsday special. Right, that's a tough book, very short, like Heart of Darkness, a couple of short books, but very, very dense. And the point is that I read what I could and never finished them. And I tried reading them again years later. No, I just couldn't. I couldn't get into them. And then I get this e-reader from Barnes & Noble, the Nook. And I get these classics. By then, right, again, through some Gutenberg or Feed Books, or I don't remember which platform, which website offered these books for free, these, free books, old copyright-free books. And I got them in EPUB. And that's when it really changed for me. That's when reading became something else, because, I don't know. For starters, just the option to change the font size, the font style, that made it easier. But also, it's an e-reader. I mean, here we can compare it to John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. It's a lot lighter, right? It's a lot easier to hold. It's a lot easier to just carry around with you wherever you go, right? Easier to flip the page. And, I actually got, one of the reasons why I got my first e-reader all those years ago, I was reading Henry Miller. I was reading Henry Miller's The Rosy Crucifixion. One of the trilogy. But I do think it was the first one, Sexist, but I'm not sure. The point is, all those are pretty big books. They were the pocket books, the pocket paperbacks, mass paperback editions, right? So, bulky, not the most comfortable of books to read. And I was reading them on my commute to work, on the subway, on the bus. Sometimes I would have to be, standing up on the bus, trying to hang on, because drivers here, the bus drivers are crazy. And so you have to hang on to something lest you, break your face on the floor of the bus. And, trying to do that while reading this big, thick book and turning the pages, it's quite the challenge, right? So I thought, how can I make my life easier? How can I make my reading experience easier and more comfortable? And so I got the Nook. But again, it changed my life. So it's a lot easier to hold. It's lighter, it's more comfortable, it's more ergonomic. You can carry all your books with you. I mean, that also. I like to be reading 4 or 5 books at a time, right? I cannot be carrying them around. And I'm trying to read whenever I can, right? If I'm waiting in line for whatever, I'll take out my e-reader and start reading. And if I get tired of a book after a few minutes, I'll just switch to the other one. Something you cannot do with the printed hard copies. And the font also, right? Changing the font, you can change the size and everything. But the dictionary, man, the dictionary option just changed everything for me. Because I would usually, as I was reading, back with printed books, I still do it, right? I do still read printed books from time to time. It's a habit that I don't want to lose. I don't think anyone should lose that. It's important. And what I would do is I would just, underline my any words that I didn't know. Underline the words, circle the page number, and just keep reading. I keep reading, and then after a week or so, I would go back into the book and, find all those underlined words and make my vocabulary list, right? I would write each word and go into the dictionary and just write out the definition, and I would use that sheet as a bookmark in those books so that I would be constantly, going over my new vocabulary. But it was a bit of a hassle, right? And especially when I really wanted to know a word there and then. And that meant, closing the book, putting it down, picking up the dictionary, finding the word, looking up the definition, and then going back to the book I was reading. It was just too much. And with e-reader, just the option, the ability to tap a word and get the definition instantly, it's a game changer. And it's not like you, at first, I remember in the Nook, they didn't have the option to save the words. So it didn't contribute much to my vocabulary because I would just have the definition immediately, very easy, there and then, and just keep reading. Just kept reading, right? The Kobo, which I got, my second e-reader, this one's my third, but my second e-reader was a Kobo, and much better devices. They do save your words, right? So you tap on a word, you get the definition, you have the option to save it. And same thing, after a while, right? After a week or a couple weeks, I'll go into my list of vocabulary and do the same thing. Write out the words, write out the definitions. I don't need a dedicated dictionary this time, but it's still important, right? To write things down and whatever. So it was with this device, with the Nook back then, that I finally managed to get through all those dense, hard, difficult reads, those classics, right? I read, finally, I got through War and Peace, I got through a bunch of Dostoevsky and Don Quixote, and my summer challenge this year is going to be Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. And I gotta say, right, it's thanks to these devices that for whatever reason, it just makes reading easier for me, more enjoyable. So I recommend it. I really do recommend it. It's important to continue to read on paper. It's important to continue to read, have the physical book. I know, listen, this does not, like I said at the beginning, it doesn't substitute the experience, right? There's nothing like having the actual book in your hands, breaking it open, smelling the book, whether it's new or old. It has this very peculiar smell, and it can be very nostalgic. It's a beautiful experience. Yes, right. It's nice to be carrying it around. It's great to be able to highlight it, take notes, right in the margins. Yes. And yet, as someone who loves reading and someone who loves books and talking about them and sharing his experiences about them, I do recommend the e-reader. So this is it. This is a more fancy kind of, right, more premium-ish model. You got because of the asymmetry, you can hold it comfortably in either hand. The screen rotates. You get the front-facing light for bedtime reading. You get the dictionary, a bunch of books, right? They cost the same. It's you're not going to be saving probably much money on ebooks over the printed book, but at least there are a bunch of free books, especially the classics. A lot of free stuff available online, and so I recommend the Kobo over the Kindle because it reads the universal electronic book format, the EPUB. It's not Amazon. Amazon is just, granted, I do buy a lot of books from Amazon. I don't feel great about it. I would much rather be buying from the local bookstore, but sometimes it's hard to find English books here in Mexico City. But I'm not a fan of Amazon, and so I find Kobo just much more user-friendly. Better devices all around, more innovative. Even though the Kindle started the whole e-reading business, Kobo recently launched a color e-reader with note-taking capabilities. I really want to get my hand on one of those. But what can I say? It's a great experience. It changed my reading habits completely. I read a lot more ever since I got one of these things. I read so much more now, really, than what I used to. And I hope that you guys, and I hope the student who was asking about that, I hope that she can find the same benefit and the same enjoyment in this new experience. Like I said, it doesn't substitute it, but it definitely builds on it, right? It gives you another option to read more, and that's what it did for me. So I do recommend all of you go out, get yourselves one of these things. It's not a commercial. We're not getting paid by Kobo to advertise this. It's just from my personal experience. But whether it's a Kindle, whether it's a Kobo, whether it's there's a bunch of different options out there. You could do it on your phone. I wouldn't recommend it on your phone because the screen is not the same, right? This is like actual paper. You can read right on the direct sunlight, and it's gonna look just like paper. But so I don't recommend phones, but it's another option for e-reading. Just go out and try it. Do try it. Give it a chance. See what it's like. You can still. What I do is, if I really like a book that I got from my Kobo, then I'll spend twice as much and go out and buy a physical copy just to have it on my shelf because it doesn't look the same, right? This does not look the same as a collection of books, of course. So it's still important to get those physical copies and read them also. Yeah, they do have advantages that are never going to. Reading is never going to change. A book is never going to change, right? Reading will always be done somehow, whether it's electronic or physical. It's always going to be the same experience. And whether it's the screen or the printed page, I do think reading is reading. And I know there are a bunch of studies out there that say reading on the screen is not the same thing. At the brain level, different things are going on that are not captured with the e-reading experience that you get from paper. But hey, reading is reading. So there it is, guys. Yeah, I hope it helps. I hope you all keep reading a lot more, whether it's on screen or on the page, but just read on. All right, keep it late. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for tuning in, seeing this episode to the very end. Remember to like, share, and all that. And I will see you here next time. Take it easy, guys. Later.